Hi, I'm Laura.
Hi, I'm Deanne.
Hi, I'm Philippe.
Welcome to our Lymond Book Club. We are reading Queen's Play by Dorothy Dunnett, and we are on part 1, chapters 5 and 6. Philippe is going to guide us through a discussion of these chapters, but before that, we're going to start out with our initial reactions. Dee, what did you think of these chapters?
I really liked them. They were good chapters. it was very like actiony and stuff happened, and we got to see Lymond be Lymond, which was super fun. And we got to like learn stuff about new characters. I have a suspicion that's not based on anything, and I'm super gun shy about having theories now because of the disaster of our first two chapters. But I don't know why I have the suspicion, but I'll get to it. I'll talk about it when I get there. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed them. I thought Lymond was just, these were just fun chapters. So.
How about you, Philippe?
I agree with you. These were excellent. Dunnett really has a lot of fun in these scenes of chaos, I think. We've seen it in the last book with like the barroom piping wrestling event in the ostrich. And she just really likes to throw Lymond into these scenes of chaos, whether he's controlling the chaos or whether he's caught up in it. Mm-hmm. And we get that in both of these chapters. The first chapter, he's caught up in it, and the second, he's sort of controlling it. So she really revels in writing this kind of content for us, and I really appreciate that. I, too, have a theory and a suspicion. I'm curious to see whether Dee and I have come to the same outcome or not, but we'll discuss that when we get there. And yeah, it's good fun this time around. It's a good way to end off the first main segment of this book.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a really nice end to part 1. Just like,
I'm so happy you guys liked it, and I cannot wait to hear your theories, and I will be a stone face no matter what so that I don't give anything away.
You're so good at not giving anything away.
My initial reaction to these chapters also, I think, they're super fun. I love them. We meet some characters that we end up, if we're like fans, we end up liking for a long time. So that's also really fun. And the way that Lymond finds his way of worming his way into the French court and seducing them and winning them over is absolute genius. And this is why we love Lymond so much, no matter how much he screws up and no matter what a mess he is, like he can do these miracles that are just amazing. And he's so smart and talented and brilliant. And it's just so much fun to read.
It was really fun. Like, I was fairly confident that he was going to win because otherwise there would be no rest of the book. Like, I felt like he was going to succeed in getting back into the French court or the good graces of the king. But even knowing that, it was so much fun to watch the process. Like, Dunnett, like, it sort of didn't matter that I kind of knew what was going to happen. It was just a delight to watch her unfold what he did. So.
Yep. Yeah, it's like, how in the world is he going to pull this off? And you're just like along for the ride. You know it's going to have to work out.
Right. He's going to pull it off, but the journey is so much fun.
100%. All right. Should we dive in?
Let's go. So we will go over the chapter 5 first, Rouen, Fast Drivings for the Purpose of Killing, which is such an interesting title. And
Can we actually just read this little bit here? Because that was so fun. I really liked it.
Would you like to read it out loud?
Sure. The following are fast drivings and unlawful drivings for the purpose of killing: driving into the sea, driving into a puddle, driving into mud, driving with malice and neglect, by which some are lost. The wounds of beasts are as the wounds of human beings, from death to white blow. So of course they're talking about like driving animals, but in my head it was just like cars. Like, all I could think of was like driving into the sea, driving into a puddle, and just the, I don't know, I saw like a 54 Mustang like driving off a cliff into the sea. It was fun.
And it's such a good name for this chapter because we see that the fast drivings for the purpose of killing are both the fast drivings of the elephant into the water by Lymond and the fast drivings of the elephants meant to kill Mary Queen of Scots. So it's like it serves this double purpose.
And the lamb that scared the elephants. Lots of animals being driven in unlawful ways.
Poor little lamb.
Poor little lamb. Oh my God.
I know.
That's actually the thing that makes it the hardest for me to reread this book, because a lot of people, it's not their favorite of the series. I love this book, but so many awful things happen to animals.
Animals. Yeah, the whole menagerie thing was a little, I mean, we'll talk about it when we get there, but yeah, anyway.
It's a great degree of empathy that Dunnett has with the animals, though. But anyway, we'll get that later.
Yeah. And we'll get back to the lamb, because something interesting happens there, too. But let's do this first segment first. So in this very short first part of the chapter, we check in with Mary Queen of Scots, who is in a house with her
aunt.
Her guardian, her ward of the state, Jenny Fleming. And we see that it gives us a really interesting look into Jenny's character, how she's a child at heart, how she has no fear of certain things, which is important because we find out a little bit later that she is definitely embroiled in the political machinations of what's happening in France right now, which was a surprise to me. I did not expect that reveal. I don't want to get to it yet unless we want to discuss it now, but.
Yeah, well, I also feel like calling her a child at heart is a little bit more benevolent than I want to be with her. Like, that sounds nice. Like, it's like, oh, we should all be a child at heart. Like, that's a nice thing to be. I don't think that's what she is. I think she is an immature baby who is completely unconcerned with the safety and well-being of others. Like, at least the way she's written here, she just wants to have fun, and she doesn't care who gets hurt. She doesn't care what the consequences are to other people. She takes her niece, first of all, her niece, who's a child, and in legitimate danger, like she has enemies, and takes her completely unprotected out into public in ways that are clearly dangerous as events unfold. And then she's also, like, as we we're going to find out later, she's having an affair with the king to the detriment of her family. Like, this is not something that is bringing political power to her family, or at least that's not what Margaret thinks, and I like Margaret. But yeah, I'm super not impressed with Jenny Fleming. She seems terrible. So
I will say I do love the line that describes her. Her soul was fanned with peacock's tails and nourished with stardust.
Yeah.
She's a character.
Yeah. I mean, she sounds like she'd be super fun to, like, go on an escapade with, but I feel like whoever is left holding the bag for her, their life kind of sucks. And it seems like it's Margaret a lot of the time. So yeah.
I think, if you remember, I said at the beginning, one of the things I think is the most interesting in this book is how every character represents an aspect of Lymond, or can be seen as an aspect of Lymond and compared with him. So something to keep in mind, the sort of fun, damn the consequences attitude of Jenny. And I agree with you, like that kind of attitude, as much as it seems delightful, can hurt the people left holding the bag, like the Margaret Erskines of the world.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not the best way to be, even though those people are a delight to be around.
Yeah. It's like she's the kind of person that she'd be fun to hang out with for a couple of hours. But if can you imagine growing up with her as your mother? So
yeah, that's the whole thing. Margaret has to be the mother, basically.
Right.
Of her
Like,
own mother.
you're the little kid who needs nurturing and support and help to grow, and Jenny Fleming is your mother. Like, ooh. It just sounds terrible. And
on the other hand, you'd have a great time having adventures and the fun times. The good times are good, the bad times not so good.
Yeah. Anyway.
So we learn that Jenny has concocted this plan to get Mary and her other children onto the Chariot of Happy Fortune, which is one of the floats in the entry, the one in which the fake king is on as well, which also speaks volumes because she's disguised as this angel, and just sort of outlines or underlines the fact that they're having an affair. So that's like her own private nod to the king, I think.
Yeah.
Oh.
Clever. But there's also a really important clue here because when they leave, the only people that are there are the, where does it say it? The Royal Guard. So
Archers.
the archers, the Royal Archers of Scotland. So I'm just going to say it right now. I do not trust the Royal Scottish archers anymore. I have a feeling that they're possibly the ones behind everything, because it says later that really nobody knows about this little plot, and to have tried to assassinate the young queen during this, you would have to have known what was going on. It was too cleverly planned. And here we clearly see that the Royal Archers of Scotland knew about it, which unfortunately means that Robert Stewart is probably a part of whatever is happening, because he is one of the Royal Archers of Scotland.
Maybe, but this is my suspicion. So he hasn't come up yet, but I'm super suspicious of John. And the
Absolutely.
reason why is because he's so milquetoast. Like, he hasn't done anything, and he keeps showing up in the story. And I find that super suspicious. It's like he's kind of bland, and he's like, he's not interesting at all. And I find that really suspicious.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like I don't like him. I don't not like him. I just find him bland, and yet he keeps popping up.
We also know that John d'Aubigny was the former head of the Royal Archers.
Right. So that's why I think why it could be him and not Robin.
I think they're probably working together.
Really?
I do.
Maybe.
That's what I'm assuming. Because,
yeah.
I mean, I really want to like Robin, but Robin also, it always describes him as being red in the face and angry that Thady is not around. Or we find out later that whoever is trying to kill Oliamro is probably doing it because they think Oliamro is actually Lymond, when we know it's not. We made the same mistake.
Mm-hmm.
I just have this growing sense that the Royal Archers and John d'Aubigny and Robert Stewart are not to be trusted.
I'm not sold on Robin.
Okay.
I think for me, he's sort of filling that Will Scott role, which, if not that she's going to repeat herself, because I don't think she will. I don't think Dunnett is going to repeat herself, but I could see him being a character who's like unwittingly doing something, or has good intentions but bad outcomes, or like he so wants to grow, and he's arrogant. Like, he's kind of an arrogant snot, and he really wants to be more, and he's looking for someone to teach him. And I don't know.
It's highly possible that he's not a part of it, but that he's being manipulated into
yeah.
on them. So we'll see. I agree with you. I really want him to fill that Will Scott role, which is why I really like him, even though he's got these flaws inherent in his character. Yeah. But I've already learned that Dunnett is playing hard and fast with trying to make you think that people are one thing and then they turn out to be another. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, it'll probably, I think it's the John d'Aubigny guy, and it's probably going to end up to be like, I don't know, Queen Catherine or something. Like, I actually don't think it's Queen Catherine, but I can see it being like somebody completely opposite to whoever I think it is.
Even if we knew nothing else, just the fact that John d'Aubigny is a Lennox by relation, he's Matthew Stewart's brother, that should be enough to tell us that he's probably up to no good.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
What do we know so far about his relationship to his family?
He seems a bit jealous.
Yeah,
he talks about his jealousy towards Matthew and what happened and his sort of stature in England.
Because I don't remember, has there been anything explicit about his feelings about Scotland? Have we learned anything about that?
I don't remember anything that I recall yet.
Yeah, I don't think so. We do open with d'Aubigny at the beginning of chapter 6, where he's thinking he's at this fancy dinner and he feels that his life is worthwhile that the great deeds of his forebears and the high honors of his brother Lennox were being outstripped by the splendor of his days. So I think he's definitely like jealous of his brother, and it seems like what he values most in life is, you know, living the same kind of high life and feeling important that, you know, his brother he thinks has.
Yeah, there's another little bit there we can talk about when we get there, but it's like he likes being around powerful, rich, fancy people. And so
Also, I love that Lymond doesn't like him, and you can see why Lymond doesn't like him.
yeah.
Does Lymond know his relation to the Lennoxes?
Yeah, I'm sure he does. He asked if Lymond knows Daubeny's relationship to Lennox. I'm sure he does.
Surely.
But he doesn't. He obviously doesn't like him because he thinks he's insipid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, which is probably why I'm suspicious, and why I'm not as suspicious of Robin, because Lymond seems to at least be putting up with Robin to some extent. I don't know if I go so far as to say he likes him, but
I know. I'm also considering that whoever's behind this, we've probably met by now. Because I think that's bad writing if 100 pages in, she just completely creates this new character we haven't seen yet that's behind it all. I wouldn't like that outcome, so.
Yeah, I think so. Also because, I mean, there was multiple mentions to like the unknown villain or this like shadow villain, which makes me think that we definitely have met the villain. Like, you know, so
cool.
Anyway.
All right, so
well, that was a lot in a little bit of a section, guys.
Sorry.
We had things.
No, it's great.
We both, and I'm glad we sort of both came to that same conclusion. I mean, I'm leaning a little bit heavier towards Robin being involved, and you're leaning a little bit heavier towards him not being. But we definitely both suspicious of Daubeney. So
the other thing I extrapolated from that is that who told Lymond? Because Lymond, he seems to know something's going to happen, or he definitely seems to have an inkling that they're on this float, because he disappears really early and goes and finds them. So I assume one of his sources must have gotten the info from the archers somehow too.
But he knows about the whale, right? He knows about the guy
whale, yep.
For the whale. So he knows something's going on with the whale, which means he knows something's going on with the entry parade and the floats and stuff. So I think you're right. I think he does have some more specific information, but he could just have been like, something's going to happen and I'm going to keep an eye out. And I don't know, because we do know that he knows the whole thing.
He definitely knows about the whale. I think he probably puts it together, right? Oh, they're going to be on the float, the whale, and
Well, and also jumping into the next section, because I think we're ready. There's something that happens that I did want to talk about. Yeah. So they sort of get Liam Rowe and Thady Boy get escorted to the entry by, of course, Robin Stewart, and John Daubeney is there. And they get put on this cart. And while they're on this cart, we see these 3 lambs that escape. And 2 of them are caught, but when the 3rd one goes missing, suddenly Thady Boy is gone as well. So I'm wondering if he sort of saw what happened with the 3rd lamb, that somebody spirited away. Because obviously we find out later this 3rd lamb gets put into the whale and becomes a part of what causes the elephants to sort of stampede, amongst other things.
By the way, what a batshit insane plan.
Oh, God.
I'm going to steal a lamb, I'm going to put it in a whale, I'm going to expel the lamb from the whale, it's going to scare the elephants, and that's going to kill the queen.
And there's something about acid. I got a little confused about where the acid came into it.
The burning oils on the elephant's back that were put on our famous half-healed man.
Yeah, it does seem like super dependent on like random chaos to work. You know, like,
yes.
What if the lamb runs the wrong direction?
But also, it's not just random at all. Like, clearly it was planned out, which means they knew that the queen was going to be on that float, which made me think back to the Royal Archer. So,
but I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't seem like a very well thought out plan. Like, it seems super, super complicated and somewhat dependent on random chance working out the way that you think it will, which I feel like somebody who was like an assassin kind of person would just like sneak a servant onto the float and stab the queen. Like, you know, I mean, like, there's no need to go through like stampeding elephants and whale paper mache statues and like
It sort of matches the attempt on a Liam Rose life when the boat rams them. Like, is that really the most efficient way to kill somebody?
like it's like super dramatic and super over the top and clearly allows for a lot of places for the plan to go wrong because both plans go wrong. So it does not seem to be like, I don't feel like we're dealing with like a professional assassin or somebody who's, you know, well versed in well thought out plans.
But on the other hand, if the plan was pulled off to its extent, how is anyone going to trace that back to a specific person? If anybody would have been blamed for that, it probably would have been Archambault, who is the sort of mahout of the elephants in this case.
Yeah.
And while they may not have specifically blamed him, it probably would have been some sort of manslaughter, accidental manslaughter, and he probably still would have been put to death for that because he killed Mary Queen of Scots.
Yeah. I just still feel like it seems like a super entertaining but dumb plan.
Well, it's certainly chaotic. So,
So I want to show you guys some pictures of the entry, but Philippe, if you want to start talking and then I'll jump in, or however you want to do it.
No, let's do the entry because that happens before sort of the assassination attempt. So.
All right. So I found a whole bunch of pictures of this, which I'm pretty confident with some of them that she used them as her sources too. So you can see my screen, right?
It says, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here's a picture of the entry itself from Wikipedia, and you can see the bridge. I guess that's the bridge that they all go on. And then there's this book. Oh, actually, first, there's a canvas print you can buy of this, which I just thought was really funny. Like, if you want a picture of...
Is that the whale?
Yes.
Like, there's a whale in the water?
Is there a whale? I see.
I can't tell.
I see like mermaids. I see water creatures. Yeah, I see like all kinds of sea creatures, and like there's like Triton there.
Yeah. People hanging off the bridge.
Yep.
Wow.
But yeah, you can actually buy a print if you want one. And then there's this book. So this book was written in 1551, I believe, and has it has a description of the entry, and it has a whole bunch of pictures from it. So obviously it's all in Renaissance French, but
wow,
that one's religion. And then here's some of the unicorns, the trumpeters.
Wait, what are the unicorns?
I guess they're referred to, but maybe not pictured, or maybe they're, I mean, obviously they were like horses with horns.
I love the description in the book about how the horses were doing okay with their horns. Like the horse was bothering the horse too much, and then later they do.
There's also the Chariot of Happy Fortune. There we go. There's Jenny Fleming and the fake king. And all these descriptions of everything. And then I actually found, so in addition to the book, which is all on this website, I'll put these all in the YouTube description. There's also this website, which has all of the pictures. So like if you want to see like the nymphs or whatever, there you go. These are a little bit blurry, but then I was trying to find higher res versions, and I found a bunch of them in the British Museum's collection with high res that you can zoom in. So you can see, like, look at this. Isn't this so cool?
Oh my gosh.
So there's like all the sea animals in the river, obviously, sea creatures and boats. And then here's the elephants. So you were asking about the hot oils. So I guess that's like these things that they have on their backs.
Yeah.
And then about tassels being on the elephants' backs on some of them. But then the Grand Elephant had like 4 vats of oil, or like censures of oil on its back.
Here we go. So this is another one of the elephants. There's 2 prints of elephants. So that must be the hot oil. And then see the guys with the turbans. One of them was Archie.
Oh, hey Archie.
Yeah. And then here's this is like the religion chariot.
There's the unicorns.
Yes, there's the unicorns. Yep.
There they are.
And here's the chariot of happy fortune, in high res. So I don't know which one is Mary Queen of Scots, but one of these. Isn't this so cool?
Probably the one with the fake Dauphin on front. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't the real.
There. Right. Yep. And then I'll put the links to these so people can look at all of them. Then there's also Anne de Montmorency who shows up in here. So that's him. And I remembered because I was saying I went to his chateau with the Lymond fandom. It was Ecouen. So if you want to go to a Renaissance chateau and see stuff from the era of this book, this is a good place to go. It wasn't like amazing, but it was really cool because it was era appropriate. And then I also just from last chapter, I found a picture of the time that I went with Dunnett fans to Fontainebleau, and this guy showed us how to play jeu de paume the old-fashioned way.
You know what this looks like? You're gonna laugh. It's the scene from Ever After. They play this kind of tennis. I don't know if you remember, but the prince and somebody, his friend, play this kind of tennis in Ever After.
I'm gonna have to rewatch that.
It's actually quite fun. I recommend it.
But anyway, this made me super happy to find all these, because then like when you read the descriptions in the book, it's like, oh, she was looking at these pictures.
Yeah.
She's got all the details, the turbans, the unicorns.
Fun.
All right.
Awesome.
Okay.
So as we've discussed, Lymond's in the right place at the right time. He jumps on the back of the main stampeding elephant and stabs it, unfortunately. Not to kill it, but to sort of drive it, to stop it and drive it into the water.
Yeah.
Thus saving Queen Mary of the Scots.
I have a question, which before we get all this, it says that they left leaving Peter Dooley behind. I'm not really suspicious of Peter Dooley for a couple of reasons, but should we be suspicious of him? Like, what do you think? Like, I'm really not, but...
I don't think so. I mean, we know that he knows that Thady Boy is
Lymond,
as well as a Liam. So he's privy to that information, and it doesn't really seem like anybody else knows yet. I'm not saying that's the case. We may find out that other people do know, but I don't know. I don't see any reason to.
But we do. We know other people know, because Margaret knows, and Tom knows, and the Dowager knows, and like that whole section knows.
So the Scottish knows, but I don't think any of the French really know yet. Although it's possible to.
Right. Maybe. Okay. I just had to throw that in because he was like, they're sort of like, we left him behind and went to the thing, and I'm like,
what's he doing?
Yeah. What's
I will say also, if you notice on 78 when Thady Boy disappears, it says this is when they're, I guess, riding away on the wherever they are with the Liam and Robin, and it says, but without Thady Boy Bala, who to Stuart's rib-squeezing chagrin was no longer there. It's like the instant Thady Boy was out of his sight, he's like, where'd he go?
Yeah. This was actually at this point in the chapter, which I no longer think, obviously, but at this point in the chapter, I thought that it was Lymond's plan that was about to happen, because he disappeared, and you know that he has a plan, or he's gonna try and do something to get back into the French king's court. So I thought at this point that he was vanishing to go manipulate,
do a plan. Yeah,
to do a plan.
It's good luck for him that all of this stuff happened and opened an opportunity for him to save the day.
I'm kind of curious about what his plan was before this happened.
I don't see. That's why I think he just got really lucky. Like, part of it, like he saw the lamb being secreted away, possibly by Pierre d'Estaing, and was like, "Oh, I should probably follow this lamb, because when the lamb shows back up, there Lymond is again." So, I mean, there's an argument to be made, at least, that he could have seen this happen and just followed it to its...
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. It's probably exactly what happened.
Yeah, and he would have recognized Peter, whatever his name was, the guy.
Pierre d'Estaing, yeah.
I think he gets knifed right before the elephants go in the water, so...
Yeah. Also, I feel like on the lucky aspect, like Lymond, I mean, I think luck is part of it, but part of it is just that he sees the chance and takes it. You know, like it's like the opportunity comes up and he has the ability to recognize it and then take action. And so it's kind of lucky, but it's kind of also his demeanor and skills. So
It worked out well.
It did. For everybody involved.
Yep.
Except for Huey.
Except poor Huey. But Huey's still alive.
He
gets burns on his back, and so does Lymond, and
being taken care of.
Stabbed. But as we find out, they both sort of get taken care of. But before any of that happens, when Lymond washes to shore, smelling like a civet cat, which I just love. It's probably the scented oils. Where does it say this? Thady Boy watched, then streaming river. Oh no, that's not
it's
what
82. Start of 82. Yes.
Thady Boy Bala, filthy, blistered, and smelling like an in-season civet cat. I just love that.
Yeah.
Very, very descriptive of what just happened. Yeah. So he comes up on the river, and one of the first people he sees is Anne de Montmorency. I probably said that wrong. Who sort of invites him to dinner that night at the behest of King Henry, who witnessed these things happen.
Mm-hmm. And I love that when Thady Boy says something about keeping Liam around, and then the way that Dunnett describes it is, "I am not empowered," said the first Christian baron, marshal and grand master and constable of France, knight of the king's order, blah, blah, all his titles. That's like, and he says, "I am not empowered to invite the Prince of Barrow," which is either saying
he's got a lot of power.
He's got a lot of power. He could easily do it, or the king hates him that badly that he really does. Like, no one is empowered to invite him.
Yeah. Sorry, no can do.
And of course, Lymond is like, it's for the best if he doesn't come anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Also, just cracks me up that he's like quoting Mallory, and then Sir Gawain wept and King Arthur wept.
He's got this like Arthurian.
And they swooned both.
I mean, we kept making all those like Robin Hood jokes from the last, or you know, references from the last one. So maybe this one will be all like Greek mythology and King Arthur.
So then we have a tiny little paragraph at the top of 84 where Liam and Robert Stewart hear about what happened with Thady Boy. I think it's interesting when Robert Stewart finds out, while the Irishman seemed only mildly amused, Robert Stewart, red-faced and a little upset, was avid to discover Thady and explore every nuance. He's upset that he slipped from his grasp in the first place. So that tends to make me think he's definitely been ordered to keep his eye on these two at all costs. Like,
but what if it's just that he's kind of starting to get a little obsessed with Thady Boy? Like,
possible.
I mean,
I also have a very severe reading of this where he's red-faced because he possibly slipped out during all of this chaos and stabbed Pierre d'Estaing.
Maybe.
I don't really think so, but it's a possibility.
Yeah.
They don't really explain what happened at all to Liam Rowe. Like, was Robin Stewart there the whole time? This isn't Andy Hunter at the Wappenshaw kind of moment where we clearly find out he left at a certain point, but you never know. We know Dunnett likes to throw things in unsaid a lot. So
I also just feel like Robin's not good at hiding his emotions about anything. Like, this man is not subtle, and he's not, like, he doesn't have any ability to be, like, keep it to himself. So I feel like he just kind of wears everything on his face, and
we can certainly read a lot of his emotions. I think, I mean, I think you could also think about there's multiple different things going on at the same time, and I think one thing isn't exclusive of other things.
And again, I really don't want him to be the bad guy, but I have a feeling he's going to be, no matter what I want. So anyway. So we go back to Lymond on the side of the road, and he comes across, no, he doesn't. He goes to where the elephants are. He goes sort of an encampment and asks to speak to Abernathy. And we find out all sorts of good things, which I really enjoyed this scene. And I really kind of like Archibald Abernathy, or as I should say, Abernathy.
Yeah.
Turkey brother.
Archie.
Mm-hmm.
Turkey Matt's brother.
Yay!
I went back and read the scene at the printing house twice,
I did too.
trying to figure out if we should have picked up on the carving thing. I don't think we should have. Like, there wasn't enough there to do that. But
I think it was a weird moment that you should have put some pause. It's like, what's really going on here? But I don't know if there's any way.
I thought he was a spy. Like, I thought Abernathy was a spy, which he was. So
I have something to show you guys, which is that Dorothy Dunnett was actually a portrait painter, in addition to being a writer. And apparently the only one of her characters that she ever painted was Archie.
Really? That's
Yes.
the only one.
Oh, that makes me feel like he's going to stick around for a while.
Well, I can't say that for sure, but here he is as painted by Dunnett herself. And I was reading or listening to interviews with her, and one of the things she wrote about or she described was watching a bunch of boxers on TV to try to understand what a broken nose looks like so that she could paint it on Archie. So you can see, obviously, this is also from the scenes we've read, so it's not a guarantee that he's going to stick around.
I'm a little sad she never painted Lymond, of all things.
Oh.
Lymond is too beautiful and perfect to ever be like represented in one form. Because everybody has their own Lymond in their head.
I was Googling Dunnett because I wanted to get some history on her as a writer and just who she was. I was trying to stay spoiler free, and I was successful in staying spoiler free, but I just wanted to learn a little bit about Dunnett. And I came across this, someone did a version of Lymond using, I think they used a photograph of young Jude Law.
Oh yeah, he's a popular one.
And I was just like, that's an interesting picture of Lymond. But
send it to me.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find it again.
There's a bunch of like, the popular ones have been like Peter O'Toole back in the day, and Leslie Howard as a Scarlet Pimpernel, and Errol Flynn. But then in recent years, it was like there was a long time where it was Jude Law, and then it became Tom Hiddleston.
I could see that with like young Jude Law, totally.
Yeah. We should totally fan cast this book at the end.
This is like the most popular Lymond fandom game, is the fan casting. But I always find it really weird because no one else's fan casting ever matches mine. So I'm always like, eh.
That could be fun. We could see. Who do you see as Lymond?
I don't want to say. It's very personal.
All right.
Well, we're going to revisit that at the end of our 6-book series.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, but so Philippe, we meet Archie, and what happens?
Yes. So a couple cool things happen. This is another character who was not as what he appeared to be, which seems to be a main theme of this book. So we find out more about that wooden, the pear wood shaped thing that he was carving. It seems that he was really onto Lymond, which is kind of cool. I like how he sort of announced it to the others. We also find out that Lymond sort of gathered that Abernathy was also Scottish because he called the elephant Huey. Huey!
Oh, actually, speaking of that moment, I have something to also show you. Here is fan art of that moment from Striped Rose and Sketchpads on Tumblr. Lymond in his Thady Boy dark hair and his hot oil injuries. And Archie recognizing him from his scars, apparently.
I really like that quote, 50% Bala, 0% drunk. For now.
Is it really Bala if he's not drunk?
Lymond certainly changes that later, so.
Yeah, I think this is interesting. Like, obviously we don't know if Archie's going to come up again, but Archie is super observant, which, I mean, one of the main things that we know about him now is that, first of all, he's Turkey Matt's brother, so we kind of like him. And he seems like Turkey Matt, but not an alcoholic, or so, you know, or not Turkey Matt, but more responsible. I don't know if maybe that's a better way to put it.
A little less rough around the edges,
right? A
right?
little less rough around the edges, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. But he's also super observant, that he was able to see through Lymond's disguise when someone like George Douglas didn't, although he kind of almost did, and then Archie distracted him, which I thought was great. But I don't know. So I'm intrigued with what he's as the keeper of the menagerie. Like, how much does he get to see? How is that going to play into the story later? Like, is this? He's clearly going to be one of Lymond's sources, I would assume. So what kind of access does he have to various people?
And I'm sure he'll probably travel with the king because it's the king's royal menagerie he's in charge of. So,
and I would imagine like there people come down to see these like really exotic animals, and so he does and have conversations around him. So he would have access to information, which
there's a number of similarities between Turkey and Archie. Also, I always notice in Game of Kings when I reread it how Turkey is kind of looking out for Lymond. And there's a moment after the drinking game with Will Scott in particular where Lymond comes downstairs drunk and he's riding off somewhere, and Turkey kind of like helps him and gets his horse ready for him and makes sure to give him some food so that he'll have something to eat. And that's very like observant and caretaking.
Yeah, he's very much a caretaker.
Yeah.
Would be the same.
Although personally, I also find it creepy in the scene that Archie drugs Lymond without telling him he's going to do it, and then he's like, it was part of the treatment, you needed to sleep, which is like good but also
could have been bad.
Like,
yeah true.
Yeah, not great, but I still like him. So yeah, he does that. He sort of fixes up Lymond's wounds. Then they have this conversation about sort of the state of things, and we find out a number of things. So there's been this sort of very side character that has been mentioned a couple times that we haven't met yet, named James Mason, who's English. And we find out that Lymond, even though he's been under house arrest as Thady Boy, has sort of been sneaking out at night under the ever so inept watchful eye of Robin Stewart. And sort of meeting with him in private.
I also, by the way, of him is all sense and no wits.
I feel so bad for him though that like he's the one that took Lymond to Arison's party, and then you find out that the only reason they invite him is to laugh at what kind of stupid things he's gonna do next. And he has no idea for Robin.
Which also makes me wonder.
I feel like he might be being manipulated, like because he's so. It seems like what they're telling us about his character is that he's just super, super straightforward and takes everything as it appears and doesn't look beneath the surface of anything. I mean, they say something about how you could, he'd let a mouse out of a mouse hole if it put on drawers and a mask. So like he completely just buys whatever's on the surface. So he'd be really easy to manipulate. Like,
yeah, he's kind of dumb. He's got a lot of need and desire to be better, but no one to help him grow.
He's super needy.
But this is all hearsay on what people are saying about him. It could turn out that he's completely different, like many of our other characters that we've dealt with in this book.
He could be completely different, but there are parts we get in his point of view where you like hear him thinking about how he really wants money and fame above all, and how it's not fair that he works so hard and he doesn't have it.
Yeah.
He's a bit superficial.
Yeah, he wants something, but he doesn't really know what he wants, and his idea of what he wants isn't what's actually going to make him happy.
Right.
Also, just a couple observations I had in this section was there's a bit on 85, amusement irrepressible pulled at Francis Crawford's long mouth, and I just like this because this kind of happens like throughout this section, which is that Lymond is. This is like a happy Lymond in a good mood, being amused by things, and it's just pleasant, and I enjoy it. This doesn't always happen. And then also I think notable is when they talk about Turkey Matt and Archie being Turkey's brother, and they talk about how Turkey died because of Lymond, supposedly. Lymond says, "I'm not proposing to make it a family custom," which is similar to what we get with Margaret Erskine later, where he talks about how like he's kind of paralyzed in a way of being afraid of people dying because of him, people sacrificing themselves because of him.
Yeah.
Yep. 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 Yep.
So he asks about Destays, and we find out that he's dead. Interesting that he actually worked for Abernathy to begin with, but I don't see a plot or anything nefarious here.
You mean in relation to Archie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Archie is solely on the side of our hero now, I think. So.
Yeah.
And how did Destays die? Who killed him?
One of the royal archers. That's my theory. Possibly Robin, if Robin was able to sneak out. I don't think Daubeny would have done it. I think that's below him. He would have hired somebody to do it.
Oh yeah, I don't think that. He's too bland. I don't think he's. Just gonna harp on that fact. I think the guy is super milquetoast. Like he's just. I don't think he's interesting enough to stab somebody, which is not actually true. Like he's clearly like retired from the archers after a career, so obviously he's got some skills in fighting or something. Unless he was just politically. I don't know, unless it was just kind of, you know how sometimes there's like those people who have some sort of political power but no skill, and so they just kind of fossed him off into a side job. And it could be one of those things where he's like in charge of the archers, but actually the guys under him are doing all the work and he's just kind of the figurehead at the top. It could be that, but I'm probably reading way too much into it.
I have to say, I think that the text tells us pretty clearly that Archie killed Destays, because it says, because it says that proof or none, Hughie, the kind-hearted big bairn of a beastie, had been swiftly avenged. And then Crawford of Lymond, looking down, kept his counsel. So pretty much, and Archie, like, he kind of lies. He says he drowned, right? And then he shows them the body after a little hesitation. He's clearly been knifed. And it's like, okay, Archie killed him because he dared to almost kill Hughie, which honestly I would have done too if someone did that to my pet. So can't really blame Archie. And then Lymond agrees to keep it discreet. And then Archie says it was a pity he drowned. So again, wink, wink, he drowned. But it's a genuine pity because that means they're not going to be able to ask him who he was working for.
Right. Yeah, we haven't got there. So I was gonna say before we get to that part of the conversation though, Lymond says this little bit about about Archie, which is sort of why I decided to believe Archie. I mean, obviously, you don't necessarily have to believe everything Lymond says, but halfway through 89, he says, you don't need reassurance, said Lymond, and neither do I. You identified me at Harrison's and told me so. You ran your guts out with those elephants today, your turkey mat over again without your nightcap. And I remember you more clearly than I want to for a murderous, reliable Patrick head rat. So he stood out in Lymond's memory. But I wish to God you'd tell me all you know about Pierre d'Estaing. So I like the fact that Lymond's like, you're okay, and you don't have to, like, I believe you.
Another rare occurrence with Lymond.
Yeah.
And they immediately start sharing information. Like Lymond tells Archie, like, oh yeah, these people know that I'm Lymond. And then Archie's like, and these people know that I'm not who I think I am either. So
And even though Lymond was like, I want to keep you out of this so you don't die like Turkey Matt did, he's also like, can I send some Scottish friends to you and just in case? So they're already agreeing to work together.
Yeah, I think you're right with the Archie definitely stabbed Peter, because it was, I mean, this whole bit about they walked together outside and faced each other. It was a pity he drowned, with a genuine frown on his face, implying that at this point he regrets the fact that he died, not before, you know. And yeah, so for sure. And then I love this line at the end of the chapter where Lymond says, to be perfectly frank, I can't wait to sink my teeth into the most magnificent, the most scholarly, and the most desolate court in Europe. So it's like, that's gonna be fun.
is indeed.
Mm.
Shall we move on to the next chapter? Anyone else want to add something?
So just before we move on, I have two things for you guys to keep in your memory banks for later on pages 88 and 89. Archie tells them about Peter Giles sending animals to the menagerie.
Mm-hmm.
And he also talks about everybody thinks he is Abernathy, except the people who know include a woman who lives in a house called Dutance and kens not only my name but my soul if I have one.
I had a feeling that was important. I marked it down, but I didn't know if it was going to be important or not. So
Yeah. So I mean, there's 4 people. So 2 traveling showmen, a money lender, and the woman that he seems to be in love with, maybe. So, or I mean, who knows not only my name but she knows his soul. Like that seems a little bit more than woman I hook up with periodically. So
Your mind goes straight to sexy.
I know, I'm saying no. Like it's more than that. I mean, if she knows his soul, that seems like they have a deeper relationship.
Yeah, what are the ways that someone can know your soul? Being in love, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, just having conversations. Like she knows who he really is at his heart. I don't know. I agree.
Another
Do we know
mystery.
where Dutance is? Do we know it?
Don't go Googling these things.
I'm not. I'm just saying, has it popped up yet?
No, it's the first time we've heard of it.
Okay. All right.
All right, shall we sink our teeth into the court?
Chapter 6, Rouen, the difficult and the impossible. Because
I love the quote that kicks off this one.
Yeah, it's a good quote.
Go ahead, Laura, you read it.
The difference between the difficult and the impossible is as follows. The difficult is troublesome to procure, but though troublesome, it is still procured. Whereas the impossible is a thing which it is impossible for a person to procure because it is not natural for anybody to get it at all. So I guess getting the king to keep you around is difficult, but not impossible.
Not for Lymond. He does it in such a...
Unless we're implying there's something unnatural about Lymond.
Well, that's certainly true too.
This first part has a really good line in it on page 93. It was one of the occasions when Lymond asleep wrecked the peace of mind of more people than Lymond awake. Just because, you know, they're all waiting on him to show up to this dinner or to see what's going to happen. And he's sleeping the day off because Abernathy drugged him.
Oh, it definitely, that's a classic one. I also like the one right before that. The cruelest and wittiest quips concern the king's forthcoming reluctant discharge of his elephantine obligations.
Yeah, his elephantine obligations.
Just the wit is amazing. And then the way that the section ends, for where O'Liamro had an obstinate humor all his own, Francis Crawford of Lymond had genius.
Yep. Yeah.
The Queen Dowager sort of trying to help Thady Boy in his entrance into the court. She really thinks that, like, if I send him all of these gifts and fancy things to wear, this script for a new horse, it'll really go to impress the king. But in true Lymond fashion, that would be completely against the character he's trying to play. So of course he leaves it all behind.
But also it would just blend into exactly their expectations and would make him boring and expected. Whereas if he goes the way he's going, he's like completely, everyone's going to pay attention to him because he's so bizarre. And,
yep.
like, but yeah.
So he shows up all dressed down with his black outfit. It's got mud stains on it. It's dirty, typical Thady Boy fashion.
I think one of her greatest descriptions is at the start of that section, which starts with each in its nest of gauze and gilt thread, of tissue and taffeta, and it just describes all the people of the court and how over the top they are, like 100 candied sweets in a basket, and then Last at the last table, soggy gristle next the sugar plums, sat Thady Boy Bella.
Yeah. Again.
It's just such an image. They're all glittering and perfect.
Oh,
And then there's him.
Okay, now I have a question. What the hell is going on with these 4 guys? You get like a page and a half of description, and so they went into my book of notes because I'm like, all right, who are these people?
And I'm sure we'll see a lot more of them in the future.
Yeah, so we've got Louis, Jean, Francois, and Jacques, and they seem to be known by their titles. So we've got like the Prince of Condé. I'm going to pronounce these completely wrong, by the way. The Prince of Condé, Sieur
Dangen.
Dangen?
I don't know.
De Vendôme and Saint Andre. And Saint Andre. So
Vidame of Charters.
Right.
Chartres.
The fourth one is the older guy that the king, the former king locked up and the current king released, right? He's like 20 years. Well, he sent him, he exiled him or something, and then when Henri became king, he brought him back. Right?
It says I don't think it says he I don't remember. What it says here is that he
no, but they talked about him before in the story. It's the same guy that they talked about before in the story, right? Where there were 2, Dion and the Marshal of France.
No, I think that was a constable before. You were talking about the constable Montmorency before. I think that's the first time we meet Saint Andre.
And this is the governor of Lyon. And he's 20 years older than the other 3.
Yeah.
He's 20 years older. He had been brought in to help teach Henri, and that caused Francis to like him because Francis, the king, seemed to dislike everybody that was close to his son. And then once the old King Francis was dead, Henri made him a Marshal of France and gave him all these honors.
Right, but I think the king exiled him because...
Okay, I don't remember. We'll look it up later. It doesn't really matter for the purpose of the story.
Anyway, but then we get these 3 young guys who are like in their 20s.
Yes.
One of them's 21. Okay, are all 3 of them brothers or just 2 of them brothers? I got confused because it says that Louis' brother is the Duke of Vendôme, and then we have, and Jean de Bourbon is his older brother for sure because it explicitly says that, and then Francois de Vendôme is the 3rd one. So is he the Duke that's also the brother of Louis?
I don't think Vendôme is a brother. I think the first 2 were brothers because D'Enghien, Jean, oh God, all of these names. He sort of left him behind in England, in London.
Yeah, so if you look at the character list, it has their full names and you can figure it out from that. So you've got Jacques d'Albon, the Marshal of Saint Andre. He's the one who's 20 years older.
Right.
And you've got Louis de Bourbon, the first Prince of Condé, and John de Bourbon, the Sieur d'Enghien, his brother. So that Condé and d'Enghien are brothers. And then you've got Francois de Vendôme, Vidame of Chartres, who is not their brother either, but they're all courtiers. So the brothers are the 2 Bourbons.
But when you look at the description on 94, it says Louis, young person, Louis first Prince of Condé, brother of the Duke of Vendôme. Condé was at the time just over 20. So wouldn't that be Francois?
Where does it say that?
On 94. Where it says, okay, a weed in the fairest orchard of France, Thady Boy had been placed with a malice both deadly and deliberate, next to the grove and painted, the earringed, the chypre, strewn young person of Louis, first Prince of Condé, brother of the Duke of Vendôme. Condé was at that time just over 20.
Here's what I will tell you. It is a whole lot of people to keep track of. It doesn't really matter. All that really matters is D'Enghien has a giant crush on Lymond, and he's the one to watch.
We don't know that yet.
Know that yet?
Yeah, it's totally in here. You can see it. I'll point out all the clues. And I'm pretty sure they're having sex at some point.
Figured out he was gay though from this description because he's like super eccentric.
He's the extra self-indulgent, a shade wilder, and decidedly more eccentric.
Decidedly more eccentric and scope.
Dongan is the one to watch out for.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, gay.
Yes.
Decidedly more eccentric in scope. Also, what the hell is so he returned newly back from London with one of the younger de Guises. Like, okay. With his favorite lovelock dyed rose. I'm super curious about what. Did he dye it pink, or is that something else?
All of these guys are characters that our friend Tara would hang out with these people. These are her people.
Yes,
absolutely.
That's so true. Yeah. Okay.
You'd be right at home in this whole scene, by the way.
I'm so intrigued by these. Yeah.
But yeah, the one to remember is mainly Dongan. Saint Andre a little bit also.
Yeah, but at this point, we don't know anything about them except what's in the text. So we gotta wait till we get there.
I will point out all the moments in this chapter where Dongan is like fluttering his fan.
No, what I'm saying is we haven't got there yet in our conversation.
All right, let's go.
Chapter, I mean, in the conversation. Wait. Okay.
So, excuse if you guys can hear any noise in the background, I apologize. Anyway, Thady Boy is sat next to Conde, who is Louis, the first Prince of Conde, and he sort of starts a bit of a conversation with him, which turns into a coughing fit, a hiccuping fit, sort of gets everybody to pay attention.
Okay, so before the hiccuping thing, though, he insults the prince at the bottom of 96, where the prince says something in Latin, which is super rude. And anyway, something about, I looked it up, it was something about like not examining your life or something. And
he lives but doesn't know he is alive.
Yeah. And then like Lymond responds with this quote in Spanish that clearly says like he understood the Latin that you just insulted me with, buddy, and insults him right back. And it kind of gets his attention. It gets the prince's attention. Before
Lymond's reply is, "Deliver us, O Lord, from a mule that brays and a lad who speaks Latin." The original reference in this quotation was to a daughter who spoke Latin.
Yeah. So he's like, you idiot. And then they get into that whole thing. But I just
I also just love the insult of basically, you know, the Prince of Conde has been ignoring this guest the entire time and showing him his back, and then Lymond asks something about the king's fool who comes over and talks to them, and then Prince of Conde says something about like, can we hope to match the splendor of Ireland in our poor little France? And then Lymond's reply is, well, at home 'tis not the fools only who make converse at table. So he really calls him on how rude he was.
He's being super rude. And like, it doesn't matter how uncouth your guest is. You should still pay attention to the guest. Like,
But then, yeah, Lymond turns it into this whole thing and he becomes so popular. And the Prince of Conde has to be his #1 fan to make up for having insulted him before.
Yeah, I mean, he's drawing at straws. He doesn't quite know, I think, how he's going to impress the king to begin with, but he knows he has to make some sort of kerfuffle to happen.
Yeah, I love how he just kind of like rides it and like seizes the moments when they come. Like he probably has ideas, but he doesn't have everything all fleshed out because he's very responsive to the moment in terms of like everyone has to go silent, and then he starts the hiccuping.
And he also kind of blackmails the prince with this whole key thing. Like clearly the key is something about an affair that the prince is having with somebody whose husband he does not want to know about the affair, because he holds up the key and the guy across the room like recognizes the key and gets mad. And so Lymond is just kind of using all these little bits of things that he finds to...
And the affair is with the Marechal of Saint Andre, who is the wife of Saint Andre, who we were just talking about.
Right. Right. Okay, but he isn't there, right? He's in London.
No, San Andre is there. The guy that's not there was Vidam.
San Andre's the older one.
Yeah, he's the older one. He's there.
Jacques.
Oh, it's Francois that's not there. He's in London.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then also you'll notice on 99, for example, from along the table, Jean de Bourbon's silvery laugh rang out. So he's the first one that starts cracking up at, or he's one of the first one that starts cracking up at Thady Boy. And these are a bunch of little hints. This is Dongen, the one who is developing a crush.
The super dramatic, eccentric one.
Yeah, and then at the bottom of the page, he's the one who, smiling watchful, had begun to flicker his fan.
True.
Is he the one that like puts his fan to the back of somebody's wrist too at some point? Or was that just sort of a throwaway line? I don't know where it is. I'd have to look.
I mean, the whole flicker the fan thing, that's super flirty.
So obviously we have all the clowning, which is hilarious, and he's like faking the hiccups, and then he's faking all these ways to like cure the hiccups, which involves like drinking water, and he's drinking all this gross water, like vase water and the like hand water that they wash their fingers
that
in.
I used to do when I was a kid. I mean, not the gross water part, but the drink out of the wrong side of the cup. Like,
really?
Yeah, so like you hold a cup up and you put your head over upside down and try to drink over the back side of the cup, and that the idea is that it takes so much concentration that you stop hiccuping. But yeah, that was like the key hiccup cure when I was little.
And then he manages to start juggling and playing with all the fools, and then knock down the pyramid of tumblers, and
the fools are kind of trying to take him down. I mean, like, because he's
stealing their thunder.
Yeah, he's kind of showing them up, and so they start tossing knives around, and that was awesome.
And
I love that what's his face? Domini is like coming by angrily, and somehow he gets an egg smashed into him.
I wonder how
did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
How
So
could that?
another one of Lymond's skills. He's apparently an expert juggler on top of everything else.
Mm-hmm.
I love how Lymond has such a completely unrealistic combination of skills, but then he has also a completely unrealistic combination of neuroses to go with them, so it kind of balances out.
Like, who the hell can learn all these things? I loved at the end of this little section where it's talking about the King of France laughing, and it says, the bored and over-refined flower of French civilization gave way to its mirth. And it's just this, I love that idea that Lymond, like the French were just, they're bored and cynical and sort of like over socialized. And Lymond comes in with this just like ridiculous, bold, uncouth performance, and they just sort of delight in it. And that's neat.
Well, and he gets through some of the fake like phoniness to some real humor, and then when he starts playing music, he like makes them cry. It's so emotional, and it's so good.
Yeah, except for the fool.
Yeah, the fool, actually, it's interesting that it's the fool who doesn't like him for obvious reasons of competition, and Margaret Erskine who's upset, and I'm actually not quite sure why.
I wrote that, and I wondered, why is Margaret so angry? I mean, I think we get a little bit in the next section, but we'll get there.
Yeah, I mean, isn't she upset because she thinks he's putting, like, what he's doing isn't protecting the queen? Like, my assumption was that she couldn't see what he was doing and, like, is mad at him because she doesn't think that he's doing what he's supposed to do. Because she comes in and lectures him about it.
Maybe. Let's wait till we get to that part and go through it. I think there's multiple things going on there. But before we do, so we have the music he plays, and I thought it would be interesting also to look at, so this is the Dorothy Dunnett Companion Volume 1. The sources of the various like songs and poems that he uses are in here. And I'm not going to read all of them, but I thought it would be interesting, like, just to look at an example of one, because this is the one on page 101, which starts, a la Fontaine, and the English translation is, "There to the fountain I would take my darling who makes sport with me." But then it has the whole poem, which is a love poem, 1,000 sweetnesses, soft words, 1,000 loving pastimes we would share, 1,000 kisses, sweet embraces there to the fountain. And it ends up being about, what is this world, my darling dear? If love and pleasure fail, then nothing boots. So from this repast, let us keep the fruits. And there's another line here, "For spring is ours, whose age is springtime still." So this is all about, youth and seizing the moment and passion and love and whatever. And it just completely goes with the scene and the character that Lymond is playing. And like all these poems are interesting because like you can look them all up and see why she put them there and that there's a reason. She's so good.
But I love the fact that like when he sits down with the instrument to really play, the first song that he sings is like this beautiful, like sad ballad full of pathos and tragedy, and everyone cries, and it's such an opposite piece from what he had just been doing with the juggling and the clowning and all of that, and I love that. And that's actually the song I'm curious about. Like, do we know what actual song he sang? Because there aren't any words to it. It talks about the king of Kerry's daughter, whose greenin was thatched with eagle's wings, and their breasts made her pillow.
I'll see if the king of Kerry's daughter is in here.
I'd love to hear a version of that song.
I bet that's something that would be safe to Google. I don't see it in here. I'll see if it's in the Lymond poetry. I'll let you know, but I don't see it in here.
I was just super curious if she'd like used a classic Irish folk song as.
I'm sure it's a real one. Yeah, actually, and I have fan art of this moment here, right? Thady Boy took the satiny pear sliced lute from the Italian and smiled at him. Drowned in the colored darks of the floor, Thady Boy sat with the frail waxlight over his head, bearded stubble and obesity sunk in the darkness. And this is from Prince of Pictou on Tumblr. And then, of course, everyone is like, "Ooh, play this for me, play that for me."
Including Diane de Poitiers.
Yeah.
Well, and she doesn't like compete with the other courtiers, but when it becomes apparent that he's injured, she jumps in to help, which is a great moment too. But before,
she's very kind.
Title for
her.
She's what?
She seems very kind.
Why do you say that?
I mean, just that she paid attention to that, and if she's who she seems to be, which is super powerful, like if she's the king's mistress, and my knowledge of French history is again very slim, but if I remember correctly, there was multiple mistresses of French kings that were like very socially acceptable and very powerful in the French court, and she seems to be one of those.
She's super powerful.
Yeah, super powerful. And so, and yet she steps down and like cares for this completely unknown.
It's interesting because she says she was not easily moved, but she was intensely curious about the newcomer. And she had no intention of competing with the flattering circle on the floor. So I don't know how much she's really concerned for him versus how much she's curious and she's using this as a way to find out. Like the whole thing with this is interesting because it's all really, these people are moved by his music for sure, and they're amused by him, but they're also a bunch of really fake people and a bunch of really manipulative people, and that's not changed. So I don't know how much I trust any of their reactions to actually be genuine.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
But that's a great moment because that's where they want to like look at his injuries, and suddenly he almost breaks character and he almost ruins the whole thing because he doesn't want anybody seeing him vulnerable. And you have like Tom and Margaret.
Sees like like
attention to him.
Yeah, and I love that the queen, like Tom's worried that the queen mother is gonna ruin it, and then she does like the best thing possible in the moment. She stares at Lymond, the sea cold gaze without focus, and scratching her nose turned to ask her neighbor a question. So like she just ignores him, and yeah.
But I love that he put so much work into this. He's got so much to prove, but he came this close to ruining it because this issue he has with like people seeing him vulnerable and people touching him.
Yeah, which is super understandable. Like, poor guy.
Yeah, I think so. I wrote some notes about this. I don't know if this is just one thing I think about in this book and I wonder about, and I think it's interesting because we have Margaret Erskine. This is the bottom of 104, and it says when he sang, her face changed to something very like pain. So it's not anger, it's pain. And we also have a bit later when he's talking to Margaret, I think, and it says that it's the only moment of genuine laughter that he did the whole night. So he's been performing and he's been faking, but all of these great, hilarious moments weren't actually what he was feeling in his soul. He was putting on a performance. So I wonder if that's what Margaret Erskine was seeing, was that this is fake on his part and that it's damaging to him. And the note I wrote, because we have that bit that comes later where he quotes the Queen Dowager talking about, wanting to use him. And I wonder if it's, he was used by Margaret Lennox. He's very, very, very sensitive about it. He gets very upset about it. And so he doesn't want to be used by the Queen Dowager, but then he's setting himself up in a way where he's being like used by the whole French court. So is it really any different?
She also has issues with Christian Stewart, I mean, huge, feeling inadequate and all of that. And he's so tied up with her death and all of that. So there's definitely, I mean, it could be that Lymond just reminds her of, because she loves Tom so much, and
she always did. Like even when
and
she
had
was
for a long
around, she
time.
would have felt like she was second best.
Yeah. By the way, this is the point where I got suspicious of John Stewart, where on 106, because it says, from the high chair, the king spoke to Lord D'Aubigny, and his lordship moved also towards the olive. John Stewart's manner had undergone a slight change, a wit, a poet, blah, blah. And I just wrote off to the side, why do we care? It was like, why did you keep bringing up this guy? So that's what I got suspicious.
So, but then the next scene is interesting, right? What did he do? He didn't go back to his room to sleep. He went back to his room and got wasted by himself drinking alone.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on with that?
I mean, he's just spent this evening doing this huge performance where nobody sees the real him, and for all these fake people doing fake things, and he could, he can't let his guard down. He can't be vulnerable. He's terrified of being vulnerable.
Yep.
I think he knows that he's going to have to sort of acquiesce to the Queen Dowager's will as it is. He doesn't really like being used like that.
Or he's afraid if he doesn't, he's going to have to sell himself to all these other people. So is it really the same result?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he kind of explains it in the next page on 107, where he breaks into a parody of her accent, and he says, "I mean to take this man in his failure, Master Erskine, in his failure and not in his success." And he says, "I have succeeded, but unless I'm careful, by God, the Dowager will have me trusted and indented as her serving man yet." Mm-hmm. He seriously has a complex about that. And again, I think it's not just him wanting to be independent. I think there's that trauma of being used by Margaret Lennox that makes it this like a really visceral, upsetting thing.
Yeah. Well, and the Queen isn't being straight. I mean, the Dowager isn't being honest with him. Like, she's not being forthright. And he knows that. And yet she also has this motivation in saving her daughter that he also wants to save the baby queen, or the young queen. I guess she's not a baby anymore. But but yet this woman is totally willing to manipulate him, and I wouldn't like that either. Like,
Yep.
yeah.
And someone who was manipulated and betrayed and then imprisoned, so he didn't have autonomy, he didn't have choices about what to do with his life, so he's really afraid of being like caught and controlled.
Yep.
I thought you would have a comment, by the way, on Margaret Erskine showing up, because you seem to be very attuned, Dee, to the social mores of the day. Shocking that she shows up at his door.
You just haven't got there yet. I'm waiting to see if anybody wanted to say anything about his. Yeah, I loved his bit about, I feel I deserve a little amusement at someone else's expense. That is all. I've worked for it. I've paid for it. And I propose to have it. Don't you approve of me? And they said, I had a suspicion back there tonight that you didn't want me to quarrel with our playful friends. And just that idea of like, I deserve to have this, even if he's being sarcastic with her, I think there's an element of truth in it too. It's like, people play with me and I deserve to play with them, you know? But yeah, she talks about how I came because a visit from Tom would be dangerous, whereas a visit from myself would be merely compromising. And so, I mean, that pause, like, she's not happy about the fact that she is breaking the social rules about, it's completely inappropriate that she's there with him, but it's better that she gets caught and her reputation is destroyed rather than Tom gets caught and he's revealed.
Yeah.
So.
I think also, just going back to the Lymond saying, I deserve a little amusement at someone else's expense. This is like the third or fourth time he said something to this effect. So even though we're like, well, it's Lymond, so he must be here to save the day. And he does say later, like, he really wants to catch the bad guy.
Right.
This is also, he keeps saying this for a reason. He's not lying. Like,
yeah.
He just spent 5 years, trying to clear his name, being on the run, 2 years in the galleys, like, nightmare life. He's got some steam to blow off.
Yeah. And he can be conflicted about the fact that, even if he feels a duty to do the right thing and, work for Scotland and save the Queen and whatever, and he's duty bound to do those things, he doesn't have to be happy about it. Like, the fact that he's got, the whole classic trope of like an angel on your shoulder and the devil on the other, like, even if the angel on his shoulder is saying like, do the right thing, save the Queen, work for, do this, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't mean that he doesn't have the other voices being like, just screw everybody. You've suffered enough. Go have fun. Like, blow all this off. I mean,
yeah,
they're not going to do anything for you. Why should you do anything for them?
Mm.
I mean,
and like a bit of anger, like,
yeah,
people, I'm gonna mess with them.
Yeah, but I did love. I mean, you're right. I did totally notice and love that Margaret. This is actually the moment where I was like, okay, I really like Margaret Erskine, because she, even though this could actually be it was a personal risk for her to come, and if she gets caught, it would be a huge sacrifice. But she's like, she valued Tom and she valued the mission and she values what's going on enough to do this anyway. So I was like, I like her.
Fun fact about her, she's listed in the character list in Game of Kings, but she never actually shows up. So I imagine she was in it and got cut.
Oh.
Yeah.
I really have to add, which is on par with the conversation, but this is probably one of my favorite interactions in any of the books so far, at the bottom of 107, in that part where she was explaining how she came here and it would be compromising. The whole back and forth, which starts with, the women were already drawing lots for you when you left, and you won. His eyes matched his words. And then it goes on a little bit later, and then Lymond interrupts and says, damn it, he added with a sudden interest. Yeah. Only the ladies.
Only the ladies?
Her voice remained level. No, she drew a deep breath. I love it. So apparently, she's talking about Der Ecouen.
Dongen and probably others.
Yeah, like
the fact that
boys
he's
are into Lymond too.
catching on that. It's great.
Oh yeah.
I smiled from ear to ear when I read that. I was like, "Yee."
See, this is why these books are super popular still. Like, there's a lot of like queer subtext or text for a book written so long ago, and you can see why Tumblr fandom loves it so much.
Yeah,
The
that's not.
subtext is becoming text.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Had to point that out. Go on.
Oh, keep your eye out for it because it's subtle, but it's definitely there.
By the way, so here, Lymond describes the villain, like this person that they're looking for. And it says, because in this sweet realm of France, my dear, lives a small venal animal who will drown a shipload of men or trample a gathering of women or children to death on the strength of a whim. I mean to peel his knees with his backbone before I leave. And so just the fact that he's describing and characterizing this villain as like a small venal animal who's doing this on a whim, again, makes me think this isn't someone who's like super strategic in their like very well thought out plans and all of that. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly batshit crazy plans.
Mhm.
So someone who's doing it on a whim is a good suspect.
Mm-hmm.
I like they have the talk at this point where he's like so nasty to her. Why interfere? The Dauphin may have plans to marry again, which is an attack on Tom and her for getting married right after Christian. But I love this because obviously it's an immature reaction, but it's Lymond being hurt on Christian's behalf, even though she's dead. It's not like Margaret's doing anything wrong.
Mhm.
But he's still so broken up about Christian and like offended on her behalf. And I love that Dunnett didn't forget her, and I love that Lymond didn't forget her.
But then Margaret responds like it's so revealing, her response to that, because she says like she knew and Lymond knew that only after Christian had gone did Tom Erskine notice the plain person of the widowed Margaret Fleming, who for years had been his silent admirer. She had not been prepared for such a challenge, but she was equal to it. She said quietly, "You hate me because I am Christian's successor, even if inadequately, even if only in Tom's eyes. But you didn't love her. You know that perfectly. Love has never struck you yet, and you should thank God for it. Be honest, at least. You are not refusing to help because of me." And I love that she calls him on it, and yet you can also see her vulnerability, and she's like, I'm an inadequate successor to this woman who's probably like, now she's dead. And so, when like really good, interesting people die, they sort of get frozen in this really good, interesting moment. And like, she'll always feel inferior to Christian Stewart.
Mhm.
And it's just like,
I agree, and I like that. I find this passage a little too much like the author speaking in the character's voice, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Like how so?
Like people take this as the voice of God. Or Lymond didn't love Christian, and we know it because Margaret says it. Like,
oh no, I don't.
Margaret has her own perspective.
Yeah, Margaret has her own perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think just because she says it, it's necessarily true. Like Lymond could still love Christian, but I love that Margaret that's her perspective of what's going on in this scene, and she calls him on it. She's like, "No, you didn't," and that doesn't mean that's true. It just means it's her take on the situation. I don't think you have to take it as gospel.
No, I don't either.
Yeah. Where's the bit about him not getting married? Isn't that in this scene? Doesn't he say that somewhere? Maybe it's later.
I don't think that's in here.
Yeah, it doesn't sound familiar.
Okay, never mind.
I do think, so he basically says, yeah, it's not because of her. And he says, I'm tired of funerals, right? Show me a project and I promise you that before it is ended, half my so-called friends will have thrown their illusions, their safety, and their virtue into the grave. And that's where he talks about Christian and Turkey and others, which is the same thing he said to Archie earlier about not meaning to make it a habit the turkey Matt died because of him. So I think this is really interesting because he says this is his motivation for this weird deal with the Queen Dowager where he's like helping but not helping. And like it's basically he has an escape route. He can always just pull back and say like, no, I'm not going to help because he hasn't fully committed to it. And if anyone is in danger, he can just stop it and they'll be safe, which is.
And I also feel like this is kind of about Richard. Like it kind of goes back to, because it says to spare my associates the pain of paying for it. And like we know from the last book that he's focused on like Richard not paying for being associated with him. And that was a huge part of his motivation 2 years ago. So I think that's part of it too.
I think it's interesting. He's like super traumatized by the events of the last book and these people dying because of him. And so he's like paralyzed in a way and he doesn't know what to do with himself. It's been 2 years. What has he been up to? And he's off here like cavorting in France, in part because he's afraid to risk other people dying if he tries to do more ambitious things.
Yep.
And then I also love that he says, I am not really fit to talk to you. I think you should go. He's only being this revealing because he's drunk.
He's just really over the fact that he would feel guilty if like more of his friends died if he does this for the Queen.
Mm-hmm.
But he eventually does decide that that's what he's going to do.
Well, and
Margaret again has another moment of where she's like, being Tom Erskine's second choice, am I forever beneath your notice as well as your trust? And it's like, oh.
Well, and specifically, this is in the context where she's offering to stand surety for his promises. Because he says, basically, anything I set out to do, I can abandon. And she's like, okay, well, can you not abandon this if I promise to make sure that none of your friends die? Mm-hmm. Which is a really weird thing to promise.
Yeah.
It kind of like emotionally blackmails him into it.
Mm-hmm.
And also, that's ridiculous. She can't promise that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will do my utmost to see that no innocent bystander is burnt. Okay, Margaret, sure.
Yeah. And Lymond's like, I'll do anything, but I'm not going to like John Dobby.
I completely love that he can't stand him either.
Yeah, he's like, he's just terrible.
When Margaret mentions again, or being Tom Erskine's second choice, am I forever beneath your notice? Lymond says, I can grasp the situation without being bludgeoned over the head with either rhetoric or hangman's humility. He's like, I get it already. Like, I know this is how you feel, so you can stop mentioning it over and over to me.
Yeah. She does say that she has the ability to kind of overhear things because she's like, I can sit by the hearth and no one's going to notice me. And she's quiet. And I mean, you can kind of, there's a little bit of a nod back to the last book if her inclusion in the character list was on purpose and not an accident. It's like, we didn't notice her in the last book. So
maybe her name was mentioned, maybe, but
yeah.
I don't know the answer to this. I feel like I missed something. This is when he says, I'm prepared to like anything except his lordship of Albany, but he did me a service tonight with his glum heifer's face. There was a moment I thought they were going to throw me out, and now, no. What was the moment that he thought they were going to throw him out and Albany did him a service?
It was when he, the bit about, is it on page 106? Where it's like,
yeah, when he comes to him at the end and tells him to stay. Do you think he thought maybe that they were going to tell him that?
Like after the whole nonsense with the eggs and the juggling and all that, and then
maybe he just means that he's the one that said to stay. Because I mean, it's not like Albany decided that was the king.
That's what I read it as.
Yeah.
There could have been another occurrence, but I didn't catch it.
Okay. Maybe it was just that. All right, let's keep going.
Or maybe he stopped them from, somehow what he did stopped them from seeing the scars on his back, maybe? Like because John interrupted something?
I don't think so, because he does show them his burns.
Yeah, I don't know. But they don't see the whip scars, right? They see the burns on his shoulders, but they don't see, and that's what he was scared of. Like it wasn't the fact that they were going to see At least that's how I read that scene, is that it's not that he didn't want to show the acid burns, it's that the oil burns, he didn't want to show the whipping scars across his back.
Maybe you're right. I think it's also he just doesn't want to be vulnerable.
I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
So then we get the reveal, right, Philippe?
The reveal, yes. So he does agree, and he asks about the rumors that Jenny is the mistress of Anne de Montmorency, however you say that word. I'm going to butcher it continuously. And Margaret's like, no, you silly fool. She's sleeping with the king.
And I wrote, whoa!
Which I like that we get this genuine surprise. This is something that Lymond didn't know, had no foreknowledge of. And it's so rare that that happens to him, it seems.
I love that his first reaction is to just dissolve into silent mirth. He completely cracks up, and this is his first genuine laughter of the night.
Yeah.
But, this is pretty bad. He also is like, this is hilarious.
Yeah, and also he's like, why didn't I guess this? It's like, oh, for Christ's sake, like, this is ridiculous.
I should have seen it. That's the place she took on the Chariot of Good Fortune. So, happy fortune. So,
I also love that his first response about this is that Dion is going to get upset, and then his second is the queen is going to get upset.
Well, and then it starts, wait, is the queen actually setting it up to get rid of Dion?
Yeah. Right.
So, I think this whole bit about finding this really galvanizes him, because he's starting to see, all of the plots that could be happening to set up for the downfall of Mary de Guise and Mary Queen of Scots. So, his mind is in overdrive after learning this information. And he sort of throws down the case for all of these different people that it could be. Never once mentioning John de Albany, though.
Right. This is why I don't think it's any of these people.
Exactly.
So, I made a list off to the side, and I was like, all right, people that it's not are the queen, the constable and his nephews, and the Douglases. It's not any of those people.
Or the king. It's not the king either.
It's not the king, yeah.
Why did the king try to be sabotaging his son's marriage?
Right. So those are people that I'm pretty sure it's definitely not it.
Mm-hmm.
So I love this bit though at the bottom of 111 where, so first she's talking about her mother, and she's just you just get this sense of her deep frustration and sort of resigned nature to her mother, and just says mother flutters her wings and every institution within sight tumbles flat. And so you can just get the sense that it's been a lifetime of her mother creating chaos and instability, and it reminds me of those kids whose parents are flighty and fun but never take care of the kid, and so drag the kid with them on various things, and the poor kid gets taken away by social services because the parent's completely irresponsible. I feel like that was Margaret Fleming.
Luckily, they had the sort of more communal child rearing back then, so it wasn't all on Jenny's shoulders to raise Margaret. Someone did a better job with Margaret.
Yeah, and then at the bottom it says she had come hoping for help and was beginning to realize to her anguished relief that she'd called in a professional.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And like Philippe was saying, he exhausts her with all this blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, he just goes a mile a minute. And throws out a really good theory. Where was it? I was just reading it to get ready. And of course I've lost it already. Everything has been done at second or third hand and on a ridiculously distorted scale, as if by someone who had no means of scouring the alleyways for the usual paid assassin. The D'Estaing presents himself, or some rogue of a captain, and the hint is dropped. If it is successful, so much the better. If it isn't, there's no hurry and plenty of money for the next time. So we see that these completely ridiculous plots that haven't really worked so far, it's not really upsetting the person who's trying to do it yet, because he's like, well, there'll always be another chance.
One didn't work. And if they can't get traced back to whoever they are, if it's just a whisper said somewhere, oh, wouldn't it be interesting if this particular float was destroyed, and no, there's no connection to them, and then if nothing happens, and if it works, it works. Yeah.
So we're going to see a couple more, I think, attempts on young Queen Mary's life.
Yep.
And possibly a Liam Rose if he travels with them. Although I think he's allowed to stay in France. I'm not sure if he's allowed to travel with them to Blois. Is that where they're going next? Blois? I don't know how to say it.
I think it's, well, let's Google it. I think it's Blois.
Blois.
Go for next.
Lois.
I love that he figures out or thinks like, what do we think? Is this true where he says Oliamro is being attacked because someone has mistaken him for me?
Yeah.
I think that's true.
I think it is too. It makes sense as to why someone
did it. Like Dunnett set it up so we did the same thing. Like the reader does the same thing. And yeah.
Exactly. Such a great game that she plays because you're like, oh yeah, I can see how that could happen.
Yeah, right. It's believable.
I also like the bit right before that too, where he's telling her all this stuff that he has like no way of knowing, that the Golden Ruse was paid off to ram their ship, and she's like, how do you know? And he's like, I asked. And then he says, for reliable information, apply to a lawyer, a barber, or a prostitute. My informant hasn't found out so far who paid the captain, but she will, said Margaret. Meaning Margaret knows right away that it was a prostitute.
It was a prostitute.
Yep.
She's like, whatever, don't play this lawyer barber business.
But also remember, Una in the previous chapter made a reference that we thought was to a prostitute. So Una's on to him and already knows some of his sources, and here's some confirmation.
And we still don't know who that person is. Yeah, I'm kind of keeping my eye out for that reference, but I don't know.
But it also fits right in with what we know of Lymond. He gets his information from prostitutes, and they love him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we get this lovely thing at the end about Oliamro, where Margaret says, Tom says he's so damned harmless he'll kill you. And then he says, nonsense. Why should I suffer moral blackmail and the Oliamro escape unfettered? He's an educated man. He has a brain. He shall be made to use it. I shall make him drunk on the palm wine of power, said Lymond sweepingly until he falls out of his tree. And I just love that we had that earlier reference of him like having the ability to lead men, but not doing it. And it's like Lymond has decided, nope, we're not doing that anymore. You're gonna take the position you're supposed to. So,
how do you think this is gonna end up manifesting? How's Lymond gonna make that happen?
I don't know. Is he gonna try and like get Oliamro to rise up against the English? I don't know.
Do you think this is a wise thing for Lymond to make a life goal?
I mean, historically, the Irish have not fared so well in conflicts with the English. So Oliamro seems kind of happy and like he's doing okay. Wherever he's from seems to be doing okay. So if they start
bloom.
Yeah. It's doing okay enough that he can leave for a long time. So
I think it's, I'm sure Lymond's intentions are good, but it does strike me that it's very arrogant. He's very arrogant.
Right.
Said Lymond sweepingly, I shall make him drunk, blah, blah, blah.
Who's to say that Oliamro's decision to be sort of lackadaisical in his leadership strategy is not actually the best strategy? Like, why isn't that?
That's true. But is it really Lymond's job to fix it for him?
That's what I'm saying. Like, even if it's, yeah, but who's to say it's wrong? Like, maybe this is the way to keep his land safe. Like, he's not pissing anybody off. Nobody's coming for him because he's not.
This is I don't know how to pronounce it either, but the sleeve bloom.
What's from?
This is where Oliamro is from.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
The land of Oliamro.
Holy smoke. I wouldn't want to leave that either.
No matter how terrible their dress is compared to the French court.
Yeah. Who cares?
There's
a little cabin and just live in the woods. That's gorgeous.
More Lymond travel goals. One day.
Have some chickens in the front yard and a couple of goats and Life is good.
Throw some potatoes in the back.
Yeah.
So Lymond is going to somehow change Liam maybe. How do you think their relationship's going to evolve?
It depends on how stubborn Liam is, and like how aware he is of Lymond's shenanigans, like, and how resistant he is to that. If he goes along with it, they'll be fine. If not,
I love Lymond's Liam is staying, which is helpful. Someone is bound to try to murder him again.
yeah.
Give him more information. It'll help him figure out who's the one doing this.
I love the assumption that Liam will apparently make it through fine, or if he doesn't, somehow that'll be okay too. Which
Yeah, I want Liam to stick around. No doubt. At least not for Liam.
So what is your take on Lymond in this chapter? What is what's going on with him, and maybe like he's talking about all these other people that need to change, but maybe is there anything any growth opportunities that you would identify for him?
Well, he does not seem to be handling his pain in a very healthy manner. Like getting drunk all by himself is perhaps not the wisest choice. But at the same time, I mean, we've talked before, like he has a lot of trauma. And I think it's a lot of trauma that he hasn't dealt with. At the same time, this is 1550. You know, nobody knows what PTSD is. Like, you know, so it's like getting drunk in his room by himself is not getting drunk in public and starting fights, you know, so, or, you know, doing, you know, it's kind of like, what coping mechanism is healthy, what coping mechanism is not.
Right. They didn't have therapy back then. Maybe they had
there's no therapy. There's no one who can.
Astrology.
Yeah. There's no one who can help him. And who does he trust? Like, who is he going to be vulnerable with? Who does he trust?
Apparently he trusts Archie.
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
pretty quickly too.
Archie just drugged him, so maybe not.
I know, it's weird. Yeah, I think also in terms of growth opportunities, it's interesting though because he's so worried about anyone dying because of him. He's also really cavalier about Liam being bait. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he's going out on a limb to protect Scotland yet again. You know, he's by protecting Mary Queen of Scots, that's looking out for his mother country. So
he is, but also at the same time, is he really there to protect Scotland, or is he just there to mess with the French court and have fun? There's like this weird multi-motivations going on here.
He's definitely having some fun with the French court. Does he see Liam as one of his men? Like, I think that's a question, because, you know, if this was one of his like band of roving marauders, he would be incredibly protective of them. Or if it was his brother or, you know, someone connected to Coulter, he would probably be very protective. But he doesn't seem to be exhibiting that same amount of like hyper protectiveness towards Liam. So I just wonder if he doesn't feel responsible for him.
Or maybe he feels responsible in a different way. He's decided that this is the growth opportunity for Liam is to step up and use his power more. So he's focused on that.
Yeah.
Any final questions, comments, ideas, thoughts about this chapter? What's going to happen next? What do you want to see?
Still don't know what's up with Peter Dooley. Still curious.
Yeah.
I'm not suspicious. I'm just curious.
A lot more of those 4 Frenchmen that we spent a little bit of time with. There's going to be a lot of political intrigues and.
I want to see shenanigans with like Diane and Catherine and the King and the 4 French guys, who I'm definitely going to be calling the 4 French guys for the rest of this book.
Yeah, we should nickname them. We should
try to nickname them. And I really want to see the menagerie some more. Oh, that's what I was going to say. I forgot to say this. I think Dunnett might have been kinder with the menagerie than is historically accurate. I'm a little bit suspicious that she sacrificed her historical accuracy in service of a modern audience, because the things I've read about historical menageries are like horrific. And the ways that like elephants were treated and lions were treated, and like they were really bad. And it seems like that perhaps wasn't the case, or at least she's not describing that as the case here. So, and maybe that'll come later. Like maybe we're going to see like horrible mistreatment of animals later, which I really hope we don't. But when I read that, I was like, this is a super nice sounding menagerie in ways that seem a little bit fishy.
It may just be that the way that Archie runs a menagerie is a little bit different from the norm, since he's such an affectionate mother to his darling elephant.
Yeah, but I think that's what's historically inaccurate. Like, I'm not sure there were people who are doing that. Like, maybe there were.
Even in history, there were outliers like Archie.
Yeah. The King's Menagerie, though, it didn't sound so good.
There's plenty of horrible things that happen to animals that I'm sure are more historically accurate. Just wait.
About it. That was not a criticism, by the way. That was, I'm fine with that. If she chose to do that, I'm very fine with it.
No, I mean, there's definitely stuff that she either makes a little more modern because it's more palatable to modern audiences, or she just kind of leaves out because it's not that interesting to us. There's a bunch of that. I mean, she doesn't spend that much time on religion. Her ideas about love are maybe a little more modern. I don't know, maybe a little more feminist, but whatever. I'm not complaining. All right, anything else?
Oh, well, this doesn't really have much to do with it, but I looked something up from the last book because it had struck a chord with me, and there may be an anachronism that she used in the last book when she had Lymond talk about Cloud Cuckoo Land. Because I've heard that before, and I wanted to know specifically what it was. And even though Aristotle wrote about it in the BCs, it didn't really come into vogue until 1800s England for them to start using that phrase. So I was like, would Lymond in 1547 really be using this phrase? I mean, it's possible that he read Aristotle, but...
I don't remember the context. When did you...
Cloud Cuckoo Land is like a place where like crazy people go. It's a land of like fanaticism, and I don't know. I didn't look too much.
You would have read Aristotle. Like that was one of the core texts. So
there is a definite anachronism in Game of Kings when Richard is torturing him in the Dell, and Lymond says, "I like sadism too."
Oh yeah,
sadism is named after the Marquis de Sade, and
right.
He was not around back then.
That's true.
I think it's fine because I'm sure there was a 15th century or 16th century word that gets the concept across, but it wouldn't have the same resonance for us.
Right.
So it's just imagine it translated into modern.
It's not something I'm angry about by any means. So.
No, I mean it's a completely historical vocabulary would read like it wouldn't be emotionally gripping in a lot of ways. It would just be like, I mean, like the color of jealousy used to be orange and not green, but if she went around talking about like in this time in the 1500s it was orange, so if she went around talking about like somebody was orange, we wouldn't have any idea what that meant. So
yeah,
stuff like that.
Yeah, I think she finds a good balance. It's got enough flavor of the times that you're really immersed in it and you learn a lot, but it's also modern enough that you can care passionately and get super lost in the story.
Get engaged.
Yeah. All right. Anything else then before we wrap up?
I want more shenanigans. I would like more craziness, more batshit plots, more
crazy
Lymond. Please have more Lymond, like just manipulating the French court up one side and down the other. And yeah.
More Liamrel trying to be a old Irish codger in the French court.
Yeah.
I would love that.
I think you guys are going to enjoy the book.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.